Hi guys, I know it's been a very long time, but you are once again watching The Global Bookworm. My name is still Kelly and I'm here with my February and March wrap-ups as well as my April TBR. And after being quiet and just ignoring me all morning, the cat and the dog have decided that now would be a good time to show me some affection. I am still in the outback in Australia, but I leave in a matter of days. I'm going to spend one day in Adelaide before I fly to Melbourne, where I'll be looking for... What is with this? You never do this. Once I get to Melbourne, I'll be looking for a proper accommodation and a proper job and just trying to be a proper grown-up, really. Now that I've done what I needed to do to get my second year working holiday visa. So, this video I need to try and be strict with myself about because I have to tell you about 11 books that I read over those 2 months that I haven't been able to upload over, and also obviously do my TBR. I see this is already getting long-winded. So, the first book I read in February was Never Fade by Alexandra Bracken. It's the sequel to The Darkest Minds, second in the Darkest Minds trilogy. And it's basically the story following a disease that wiped out most of the children within a certain generation. And the children that survived even, were left with abilities, and those abilities kind of made them reviled by the surrounding normal people, and they were rounded up and put into quite barbaric facilities. I've already talked about this previously, and I also did a review of The Darkest Minds, which I'll link below. I gave Never Fade 4 stars. I did still enjoy it, but it took me a long time to get into it. I thought it was quite slow going, and that I think is due to the separation of two characters. I did give The Darkest Minds 5 stars, so hopefully the next book, which is After Dark, I think, don't quote me, hopefully that one will be back up to 5 stars, or at least 4.5. The second book I read in February was The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I gave this one 4 stars. It's the first in a series about a girl called Lily, who is the only non-psychic in a household full of psychic women. It's a very idiosyncratic family, really enjoyable to read. And Lily's power basically is that she amplifies the energies around her, so she makes it easier for the psychics to be psychic. And one day she is helping her aunt to see the spirits of those who are going to die over the coming year within their village, their town. And she sees a boy, a raven boy, and the Raven School is an elite, affluent school that she doesn't hold in very high regard, but she nevertheless becomes embroiled in it, and with, well, 3 of its students anyway. I did enjoy this one, but I also don't feel any real urge to continue it immediately. Maybe I'll finish it eventually. The characterization was really vivid and good. They were erratic and flawed. I understand why people talk about it being quite original and unique, and I would definitely go along with that. The next 2 books I read were Under the Never Sky and then Through the Ever Night by Veronica Rossi. I gave each of these 4 stars. They're the first in a dystopian trilogy set in a world where the sky is ether. It's so molten that it can strike the ground and set it alight, and it's scorching the living from the arable landscape. And there are 2 people. There are some who live in pods and experience the world through virtual simulations, and then there are those who barely scratch a living actually on the outside. Arya and Perry come from these respective worlds, and the story kind of begins with the events that throw them together and what their meeting means and where it leads, and it's really good. It has a great romance. There's no love triangle, even though there is a very, very close friendship between a handsome boy and a good-looking girl of the same age. Like, they're really close, but there is no romance. It's just such a treat to read that. And there's great character development. Like, Arya in particular really changes, I think. And Perry was just awesome to begin with. Are you going down now? Good, because you've been distracting me. Next, I managed to get myself an arc, a digital arc from NetGalley of The Winner's Crime by Marie Rakowski. Last year I read The Winner's Curse, about a girl called Kestrel who is a member of the ruling class who bids for a boy called Aaron at a slave auction, and winning him has grave consequences. Like, seriously, stuff goes down in that book. I don't want to say too much about the sequel, except that, oh my god, it was bleak. It really messed me up for a while. I've never known a character as alone as Kestrel is in this book. She's trying so hard to be strong, and she is strong, but you can see where her machinations and moves and counter moves are beginning to act against her. It's Shakespearean, the way that you see things piling up, and oh, it doesn't end well for her. But the amount that she goes through in this book, surely she's got some good stuff coming in the third. Surely, please. Yeah. I love all these strong women we're getting. We've got Selena, we've got Kestrel. Who did I just read in A Court of Thorns and Roses? What? I'll get there in a minute anyway. Anyway, strong women is a good thing that we're having in YA these days. Desperate for the next book. Really, really desperate for the next book, which doesn't come out until... That was a nice bird song. I'm assuming it doesn't come out until next year because I'm just not that lucky. Anyway, yes, I got that one from NetGalley. Another one that I got from NetGalley was The Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, which had another very strong female, as I was trying to tell you. She's called Feyre. And when I heard that Sarah J. Maas was writing a new series and it was going to be a Beauty and the Beast retelling, I was all over it. It's the story of Feyre, a young huntress, so not an assassin this time, we've got a huntress, and she's trying to feed her father and her sisters with little success or thanks. Like, her family life is quite... I did not like her family for most of the book, although there was like a realistic evolution of that dynamic, that family relationship, later in the book, but I get ahead of myself. One day she kills a huge wolf, and soon after a creature from the neighbouring fearsome fairy realm comes to punish her, and she's taken away by him to his castle, which, you know, that's the deal. He either kills her there or she goes away with him. And as you might expect from the woman who gave us Selena the Assassin, Feyre is another magnificent heroine, and her path to true love certainly does not run smoothly. The first book really has two arcs, the first being more slow and kind of establishing the relationship, and the second being trying to keep that relationship or win it back, or I won't tell you. And from the end, it does look like we're going to have a love triangle, but it's one I am incredibly excited to see because I've already chosen a camp, and the guy that I'm supporting is going to be very interesting, I can already tell. So, I don't even know what number this is now. Then, whatever number this is, I read Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare, and this was actually the last book I read in February. A Court of Thorns and Roses left me in such a book funk that I really just spun around for a couple of days trying to figure out how to follow it, because all I wanted was the second book in that series. So, I decided to finally, after hearing about him for years, read about Will Herondale. So I picked up Clockwork Angel but I read it with a certain amount of trepidation because I tried reading Cassandra Clare's Mortal Instruments. I read the first one, which was City of Bones, and I just did not get on with it, really. I found it a bit boring and young. You know, some YA feels like young adult, and some of it feels more of that crossing boundaries, transcending genre feel, like Sarah J. Maas. This, Cassandra Clare, just I don't think she works for me yet, and it's not because she's a bad writer. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Clockwork Angel is set in 1878, and it's the story of Tessa Gray, who finds herself embroiled in the supernatural underworld in London just after she arrives from America seeking her missing brother. Once she's there, she finds that her only allies in all of this are the shadow hunters, in particular the what are they called? Parabatai? Basically the fighting pair of Will, famous Will Herondale, and James Carstairs. I've heard a lot about Will and Jem, and I finally got to meet them, and unfortunately, although I understand why readers love them, why they were torn between them, and I get the whole Will Herondale thing because, I don't know, his wisecracking, his humour, his love of reading are very appealing, but I think it's something that's been killed by the hype for me. I've just subsisted on other people's love of these characters, this world, and I feel left out. I can't engage in it. I think I might be a bit immune to Cassandra Clare. What I did like was the historical setting. I love the steampunk feel. There is a clockwork army. That's cool. The London setting was a bit cliched. Well, the representation of it was cliched and not very imaginative. Maybe I'll finish it. I'm more likely to finish Infernal Devices than I am to finish Mortal Instruments. Oh, it's just too much. It's all getting a bit much. Oh, I finished that though. Now I can move on to the pad of paper. We're on to March. First, I read The Madman's Daughter by Megan Shepherd. I gave this one 4 stars on Goodreads. It'll be 4.5 stars on my blog. Interesting premise. It's a retelling of The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. In this story, a London maid from a disgraced, formerly wealthy family by the name of Juliet, that's a very long sentence, finds her way to an island where her doctor father has been living since the scandal surrounding his gruesome experiments years ago, and on the island she is brought face to face with his experiments as well as his handsome assistant Montgomery and a mysterious castaway called Edward. There's going to be a drive-by at some point. And I enjoyed it, while at the same time leave the cat alone, thinking that Juliet lacked a little something. I like her darkness. She does seem a bit unstable, and that is more interesting than the perfect pop-out princess, but her approach to Montgomery and Edward is quite vapid. And the love triangle, well, it's not that much of a love triangle in the first book, but I think it's going to become more of one in the second book, which I believe is a retelling of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I like that, the way that the author, Mary E. Pearson, did I say that? No, that's not, that's the next book. Megan Shepherd. I like the way she's done it, stitching together a different retelling for each book. It makes me wonder what the third book will be. Then I read The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black, which was on my list of the most anticipated releases for the first half of 2015. I am not making this easy for myself, am I? But I wound up feeling a bit disappointed by it. I've given it 3 stars. It's set in the mysterious town of Fairfold, where fairy activity is rife and often dangerous, and there exists in the forest a glass coffin with a sleeping prince, like an elven-eared prince, and he's been there for centuries, and he's part of the lore there, he's part of the town history, he's a tourist attraction. They've all tried to wake him at some point, and one day he does wake up. The main characters in this are actually, what are they called? Hazel and Ben, brother and sister who have both been in love with this prince since childhood, and he wakes up and an adventure occurs. Since I read this mostly because of the prince in the glass coffin, I was very disappointed that he wasn't actually a key player in it. Like, he was a catalyst more than anything. He significant but not, I don't know what I'm trying to say. He wasn't there, he wasn't present enough for me, and I didn't get to know him enough. He was still the sleeping prince to me, even when he was awake. I also didn't buy his affection for the mortal that he ultimately ends up with, although that did buck the trend. It just seemed forced and hurried and unnecessary, and why put him with anyone if you're not going to put him with someone that just works, that seems believable? And it wouldn't have seemed believable with anyone in the book, for me. Articulation has gone out the window. The third book I read this month was The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. 5 stars on Goodreads, 4.5 stars on my blog. It's the story of a princess who runs away on the day of her wedding and is pursued by the jilted prince and an assassin. And she doesn't know who these two men are when she meets them in her new home, this idyllic town that she's run away to. And also the reader doesn't know who they are either, because although we have split perspectives, and we do get the prince's perspective and the assassin's perspective, when we get those point of views, it just says the assassin or the prince at the start of the chapter, and then later on you don't get that, you actually get the names. You get Caden and Rafe, but you still don't have enough information to know, oh, Caden is the assassin, or Rafe is the prince, or Rafe is the assassin, or Caden is the prince. You don't know, and that's quite a clever plot device, and I got it wrong. I was so sure that I knew who was who, and I was wrong, happily wrong, because I wanted her to be with someone, and it didn't seem like it was going to happen. The Princess Leia, is a great heroine, another very strong one, and not your typical princess, and actually by the end of the book she's grown much stronger. A lot of time passes in this book, and I think it was about 500 pages, I want to say, so it's a pretty long book. And again, 2 arcs. The one where she's establishing a new life for herself in this town, this picturesque town. The dog is having a dream. And then the second half where it's all there's more conflict and stuff. I'm excited. There is a love triangle. Well, the premise says that there's a love triangle, but I would say that she's already chosen. So I hope I'm right in that they don't force a love triangle. The last book I read, actually haven't quite finished reading it because it's taken me forever. The Iron King by Julie Kagawa is the story of Megan, who must venture into the fairy realm to rescue her kidnapped 4-year-old brother Ethan, and helping her on the way is her prankster best friend Robbie and an icy-hearted prince named Ash. Cue love triangle, although again I think she's already chosen, and she's chosen the obvious choice, which is part of my issue with this. It features a boring, lackluster, predictable heroine. And I didn't understand the Midsummer Night's Dream character name tie-ins. It didn't lend it anything for me. All it allowed the author to do was just decimate the character of Puck, who is an awesome character. I can't explain why it hurts so much without spoiling it, although honestly you'll find out pretty soon early on. it wasn't the worst book. The writing's not bad. In fact, there's some really nice turns of phrase. I probably highlighted them on my Kindle, but I cannot be bothered to go get my Kindle, so trust me on this. There was some nice wording in there. I'm going to tell you what I have planned to read in April, when I'm also hoping to take part in Camp NaNoWriMo, although I might be biting off more than I can chew because I will be trying to settle into Melbourne at that point. Rambling. So, I want to read Crimson Bound by Rosamund Hodge, another book that was in my most anticipated video. It's not related to Cruel Beauty by the same author, but it certainly has a tie-in cover. So I want to read it. It's a fairy tale retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. It sounds dark and gorgeous. Then I want to read Half Wild by Sally Green. It's the sequel to Half Bad, and excitement. And I want to read The Sin Eater's Daughter by Melinda Salisbury, about a girl who is the court assassin, essentially. But, well, no, not assassin, she's the executioner. So she doesn't do it in secret. She is just death incarnate. Then I would like to read the much touted Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, and A Wicked Thing by Rhiannon Thomas, which I'm really curious about because basically it's Sleeping Beauty waking up to the handsome prince's kiss and just thinking, so now I have to marry him? What the hell has happened here? What? As you would. So I'm looking forward to that. Then I am thinking on the train to Adelaide, no, the bus to Adelaide, which is going to be sort of it's probably about 7 hours. I would like to read On the Island by Tracy Jarvis or Garvis Graves. And it's basically about a 30-year-old English teacher called Anna Emerson and her student TJ Callahan, who are marooned on an island, and they are there for years, so you can imagine how that dynamic changes. Then I would like to read Angel Fall by Susan E. This has dark angels, which is a very nice thing to have in my life, and I don't know, it just feels very independent and rugged. And this might have been fan fiction to begin with or something. I feel like this is one that came to prominence on the internet before it was published legitimately. Another one that is definitely penciled in that I really want to read is Into the Still Blue by Veronica Rossi, because I read the other two at the beginning of this year and I should try and read the third and final one before too much time passes, and I just want to see Arya finish becoming kick-ass, because she's getting there. And that is the end of what is going to be another colossal video. You must admit though, there was a lot of information and a lot of rambling in that video. I'm not even going to try to excuse it. Thanks very much for watching, guys. This will probably be the last video in the Outback unless I'm suddenly inspired within the next 3 days before I leave. Hyper. Bye!